You know, I've spent 23 years with the Bureau, tracking down cartels, busting multi-million-dollar fraud ring stuff that makes for a great movie, right? But the most explosive, most nationally significant case I ever closed didn't happen in a warehouse in Miami or a boardroom in Manhattan. It happened right in my own damn driveway, on a perfectly manicured street in a town we'll call Cypress Ridge. It's still surreal to think about the whole thing. Started because of a pair of tailored Italian shoes and a $12,000 watch. It was 9:47 a.m., Tuesday. I remember the exact time because my Omega Seamaster is an absolute clockwork, and honestly, it was key to the whole operation. I was just adjusting my tie, an absurdly expensive silk one, a gift from my wife, Dr. Keisha Brooks, standing by my new Rolls-Royce Ghost. Yeah, I went a little overboard after that last promotion. I admit it when I heard the heavy, purposeful crunch of boots on the granite sidewalk. I knew immediately what that sound meant in a neighborhood like mine. I looked up, and there he was, Officer Roy Daniels, badge 3144. He had that particular kind of sneer, you know, the one that says, "I'm in charge, and you do not belong here." His face was already red, and he looked like he'd just swallowed a lemon. "What the hell do you think you're doing loitering, boy?" His voice was a whip crack, cutting through the morning stillness. "I mean, loitering?" I was standing 3 feet from the mahogany door of my own colonial estate, a house I paid $3.2 million cash for. I turned slowly. I'm a big guy, 6'3", and I wear my suits well, and I responded with the quiet, measured tone that 20 years of federal protocol hammers into you. "Officer, I live here." He just laughed a dry, hacking, contemptuous sound. "Sure you do. And I'm the Pope. Turn around, hands behind your back. Now." Before I could even finish saying "hold on," he grabbed my wrist, twisting it just hard enough to sting, fixated on the watch. "This is stolen Rolex. You casing the joints? You look exactly like the profile we got." Now, I was mad. Not shouting mad, but that deep, cold, calculating federal agent kind of mad. 23 years serving this country, working under the color of law, and here I was, being treated like a common thief on the property I pay $58,000 a year in property taxes for. He slammed me against the hood of my car. The metallic thud rang down the street. "Tan for a second. All that protocol was fighting against pure instinct. You don't belong here, you piece of garbage," he hissed, his stale coffee breath hitting me right in the face. It wasn't just the words. It was the raw, humiliating, unearned hatred in them. And that, my friends, was the moment I knew Operation Mirror was about to enter Phase 2. You see, this wasn't random. My name is Elijah Vance, and I am the Assistant Director of the FBI's Civil Rights Division. For 18 months, I had been running a massive, high-stakes internal investigation into systemic bias in American policing. We called it Operation Mirror because we wanted these departments to look in the mirror and see their own ugliness reflected back. Cypress Ridge PD was a target because of their egregious racial disparities, stats 95th percentile nationally, meaning only 5% of departments were worse. I bought that house, I drove that car, and I stood in my own driveway, knowing this was going to happen. I built the stage. Daniels just chose to step onto it. He snatched my wallet, flipping through my personal life like it was contraband. "Elijah Vance," he read, mocking the name. "Federal Credit Union Platinum. Where'd you steal this government card from?" He missed the small, sterling silver eagle pin on my lapel, barely visible, but standard issue. He was looking for a narrative, a black man who stole something, and he missed the one that would end his career. Across the street, I could hear the faint, insistent pings of a phone. That was Mrs. Vivian Stone, God bless her. She'd seen me every morning for 3 years, and she was live streaming. I heard her whisper, "This is sickening. He lives here. I've been waiting for this moment." The comment section was already a firestorm. "Call the FBI. This is 2025, not 1955. But there were the dark, familiar voices too. He looked suspicious. "Casing the neighborhood. They don't belong here." Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. The caller ID read, "Director Sloan, the Bureau." I declined it. Not yet. I glanced at my watch. 9:50 a.m. 8 minutes until the appointed time. The backup arrived, a younger officer, Mills, looking nervous, and a veteran sergeant, Rodriguez, who had the look of a man who knew a bad scene when he saw one. Rodriguez was the one I was interested in. He had the power to de-escalate. "Got a trespasser," Sarge Daniels reported, smugly. "Claims he owns the place." Rodriguez looked at my $45,000 suit, then at the $3.2 million Colonial looming behind us. The math wasn't adding up for him, but protocol is a heavy coat. "Documentation, sir?" he asked, his tone skeptical but professional. I reached slowly into my jacket pocket. Both officers tensed, hands instinctively moving to their weapons. I didn't pull a weapon. I pulled my key fob, the chunky, distinctive fob for the Rolls-Royce, and a hefty set of house keys. Daniels snatched them. Could have made copies. Could have stolen the car. "Officers, he's lived here for 3 years. His name is on the mailbox." Mrs. Stone's voice boomed from across the street. "Mum, step back from the investigation," Mills called out. I smiled, just the faintest twitch of the lips. Daniels noticed. "What's funny, boy? You think this is a joke?" "No, officer," I said quietly, locking eyes with him. "I think this is exactly what I expected." That hit him wrong. Expected. He saw conspiracy where I saw data. More neighbors started creeping out, drawn by the commotion. The Hendersons, the Wilsons, and then the one person I needed to show up, the real villain of my local narrative, Karen Bell, the HOA coordinator. She walked up, her badge prominent on her jogging outfit, a self-appointed neighborhood czar who had sent me 3 different passive-aggressive letters about my recycling bins and my lawn statues. "Officers," she announced with proprietary authority, "I'm the coordinator. We've had break-ins. I can confirm this individual does not belong here. This neighborhood has standards." Mills nodded. "See, Mr. Vance, the community is concerned. I've lived here since 2022, I stated calmly, addressing her directly. "I've never met with any HOA coordinator." "Because you're not supposed to be here," Karen replied, her voice cold and thin. She wasn't motivated by safety. She was motivated by a social structure she desperately wanted to uphold. That was the depth I needed. That was the perfect moment. The live stream viewer count hit 5,000. I felt the slight vibration of my phone again. Director Sloan. Second call. Declined. Daniels stepped into my personal space, his temper finally snapping. "You know what? We're taking a ride downtown." Trespassing, failure to comply, public disturbance. I looked him dead in the eye. "Officer, I strongly recommend you wait." "Wait for what, smart guy?" "You'll see." 10 a.m. The minute hand clicked precisely into place. The handcuffs snapped onto my wrists. The cold steel bit into the silk lining of my jacket, but I stood perfectly still. "You have the right to remain silent," Daniels began, satisfaction dripping from every syllable. "Officer Daniels," I interrupted him, my voice cutting through his Miranda rights like glass. "Badge number 3144. I want you to remember that number." He paused. I watched Director Sloan work, and it was a thing of terrifying, surgical beauty. She wasn't interested in a personal argument. She was interested in the systemic failure that Daniels represented. She didn't shout. She cited statistics. "Officer Daniels," she said, her voice dropping to an almost conversational level, making it even more chilling. "How many formal complaints have been filed against you in the past 2 years?" The exact number. He just stood there, speechless. I don't know the exact. 17 complaints. Sloan cut him off. Without even consulting a tablet, she knew the file. 89% involving people of color. Your department receives $2.3 million in federal funding annually. Civil rights violations can trigger federal oversight and budget review. The financial threat that hit Rodriguez and the other officers harder than any moral argument. They saw their equipment, their overtime, their very stability flash before their eyes. Sloan then nodded to one of her agents, a young woman named Agent Torres, who approached me with bolt cutters. Click. The handcuffs fell away. I rubbed my wrists, smoothing the wrinkles from my suit jacket. For the first time all morning, I felt the full weight of the U.S. government standing behind me. "Officer Daniels," I said, my voice now carrying a deep, calm authority that was utterly new to him. "Do you remember what I told you about your badge number?" He just nodded mutely, broken. "This incident is now a federal record. Badge 3144. Officer Roy Daniels. Unlawful detention of a federal agent. Civil rights violation. Abuse of authority." Karen Bell, the HOA coordinator, tried to slip away. Sloan stopped her cold. "Ms. Bell, you stated that Agent Vance didn't belong in this neighborhood. Your discriminatory statement is also part of the federal record. Your HOA board will receive federal guidance on fair housing compliance. The system doesn't just catch cops. It catches the community that supports them." Chief Morrison, the department head, finally roared up in his unmarked car, his face the color of wet cement. He took one look at the FBI command unit setting up. The news van's arriving. Mrs. Stone's live stream was at 15,000 viewers, and Daniels defeated in the squad car. And he understood. His department was already dead. Sloan ushered the chief over to a mobile command unit. The real corporate-style power play began. She laid out the data charts and graphs on the screen. Cypress Ridge PD was in the 95th percentile. For racial disparity, black motorists were 3.7 times more likely to be searched, even though contraband discovery rates were lower. It was damning. "Chief Morrison," I stepped forward. "The financial implications. Section 14,141 of the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act. That $2.3 million grant is gone. Immediately. Add the $4.7 million cost of Operation Mirror's 18-month investigation. Your city is bankrupt." His knees nearly buckled. He was facing total collapse. "However," Sloan said, offering the lifeline, "there's an alternative. A consent decree." I laid out the terms. The Washington Protocol complete restructuring. Mandatory bias training 40 hours annually. Not the pathetic 8 hours every 3 years they were doing. External oversight board with community representation. And the final, brutal twist, Officer Daniels would serve as a case study in federal training materials. His actions would now educate thousands of officers on what not to do. "What specifically happens to Officer Daniels?" Morrison asked quietly. 6 months suspension without pay, Sloan replied. 200 hours of bias training. 100 hours of community service in predominantly black and brown neighborhoods. He would spend his suspension serving the very communities he despised. Morrison looked around at the cameras, at the feds, at his crumbling career. He surrendered. "We accept the consent decree." He signed the documents right there. On the hood of the command Tahoe, the crowd across the street, watching Mrs. Stone's stream, erupted in applause. Justice, documented and achieved. I walked over to the chief as he collected his composure. "I'll be setting up a permanent field office here within 30 days, Chief," I smiled. "I'll be your new neighbor permanently, overseeing daily compliance operations." The man Daniels tried to throw out of the neighborhood would now be running the neighborhood's law enforcement. The irony was perfect. 6 months later, the Elijah Vance Federal Field Office occupies the corner building, 3 blocks from where I was handcuffed. The numbers tell the story. Racial profiling incidents in Cypress Ridge PD down 81%. Bias complaints down 85%. Community trust surveys up 70%. Daniels completed his training and community service. I saw him once, coaching youth basketball in East Cypress Ridge. He looked like a humbled, lost man. But he was trying. He later gave a public interview, saying, "Agent Vance changed my life. I was raised with hate, but I don't have to live with it." My wife, Dr. Brooks, is now co-chairing the External Oversight Board. I was promoted to Assistant Director of the newly created National Bias Prevention Unit. The Vance Protocol is now required. Reading in police academies across the country. Mrs. Stone's video, now with 15 million views, is the definitive proof that ordinary citizens with a smartphone can trigger federal investigations. You see, I could have fought back with anger. I could have sued. I could have shown my badge immediately and had him arrested. But that would have been personal victory. By choosing patience, documentation, and the full leverage of the federal system, I achieved systemic progress. I created a case study so irrefutable, so public, that it forced real change. The core lesson. True power doesn't come from confrontation. It comes from preparation. It comes from staying calm enough to be strategic. It comes from evidence. So, I'm asking you, when you see injustice, when you feel that sting of bias, don't just get angry. Get evidence. Your story matters. Share your thoughts below. What's the biggest barrier to police accountability in your community? Tell us your blacktail stories. Let's document our way to equality. Because stories like this don't have to end with despair. They can end with transformation.